I am the male character who came to conquer fate and change the tragic ending of the female lead, Jessica. I am also the man she later held closest to her heart. On the very first day of our marriage, I told Jessica half-jokingly that if she ever betrayed me, I would truly disappear completely. From heaven to earth, she would never be able to find me again. It scared Jessica so badly that she locked the doors of our home and spent 7 days and 7 nights in reckless passion with me. She was afraid that I would disappear, and even more afraid of having to face a world without me. So she chose to love me twice as hard, until one day, I discovered that she was keeping a secret lover, and the man she was hiding was none other than the original male lead of this world. So I summoned the long-absent system. I apply to disappear from this world. I want to go home. I don't want to keep changing her fate anymore. A fate where she is dragged down by the male lead, tortured to death, and utterly ruined. Chapter 1. Host, are you sure you want to leave? Once confirmed, 3 days from now, all traces of your existence in this world will be completely erased. At that time, everyone will forget you, except for your wife, Jessica. I closed my eyes and let the cold snowflakes fall onto my face. They melted into water and slid down. Yes, I'm sure. System detected that Jessica is already pregnant with the host's child. Once confirmed, the child will also be erased. Are you sure? Yes, I'm sure. Erase the child as well. When I said those words, I still couldn't hold back my tears. The moment they fell, my heart ached uncontrollably. I am a conqueror. I came to this world because I couldn't bear Jessica's tragic ending in the book. In the original story, she would be deceived by the male lead at the peak of her career, lose everything she owned, and end up completely ruined and disgraced. To prevent all of that, after coming to this world, I chose to start as a 7-year-old orphan, just to grow up with her, rely on each other, go from having nothing to achieving fame and success together. For 16 years, I finally managed to help her miss every single encounter she was supposed to have with the male lead from the book. Originally, once I completed the mission, I could have taken the enormous reward and retired with honor, but watching her look at me every day, her eyes filled with starlight meant only for me. I completely fell. I still clearly remember the day the company went public. On the massive electronic screens across the entire capital, my wife Jessica's interview played on a loop. Dawn Group was named after my husband. That was also a promise I once made to him. Jessica truly loved me. On the day of the successful listing, she transferred all her assets and shares into my name. When faced with reporters' questions, the woman who was always calm and decisive blushed for the first time. To me, James is my entire world. Yes, my entire world. Once, I believed that too. That was why I chose to stay. Since she saw me as her whole world, how could I abandon her alone? But staying in this world was never easy, so I paid the price with my 2 legs, and from that day on, I spent every day and night confined to a wheelchair. Even so, Jessica never once despised me. Every time she attended high society banquets, she would personally push my wheelchair, proudly introducing me again and again, her eyes full of affection. This is my husband, James. I knew she was afraid I would feel inferior, afraid I would doubt her sincerity, afraid that she might leave me because I was disabled. I never doubted her sincerity. It's just that sincerity is like snowflakes, beautiful, but fleeting. 2 months ago, I discovered that Jessica was keeping another man outside. Every time she used the excuse of an important meeting, she was actually going to be with a man named Christian. Christian, the name of the original male lead, the childhood friend who should have appeared by her side when she was 6 years old. So they still met in the end. Even without sharing hardship, they still fell in love at first sight. I rubbed my face, pushed my wheelchair from the balcony back into the room, and wrote a farewell letter. In it, I wrote about my origin, my purpose, and her future. I wasn't trying to change her ending anymore. After coming to this world for 16 years, I just wanted to give my past self an explanation. James, what are you writing? Jessica walked over with a bowl of medicine. Seeming to notice my low mood, she spoke softly in a coaxing, almost coquettish tone. There were a few things at the company that needed handling today. That's why I came back late. But I bought your favorite pastries. After you finish the medicine, I'll get them for you. Okay. I took the bowl from her and drank it down in one gulp, not wanting to expose her lie. That afternoon, the group couldn't find Jessica for the meeting. They even called my phone, so where exactly were these things to handle? James, do your legs feel any better today? As she spoke, Jessica bent down and gently massaged my legs. Before long, a thin sheen of sweat appeared on her skin, fragrant and glistening. In the past, whenever I saw her treat me with such care, I would feel both embarrassed and deeply moved. But now, as I looked at the glaring hickey on her neck, my heart slowly sank. So it turned out that those moments that once moved me so profoundly had long been mixed with traces left by someone else. Instinctively, I pushed my wheelchair away from her, then reached for the farewell letter on the table. My hand trembled slightly as I packed my luggage. Host. Detected that the target character Jessica's affection level toward you is still as high as 99%. The system's voice sounded by my ear, but I simply shook my head. No, I have seen Jessica at 100%. So even a 0.1% lack of purity is a 100% betrayal. The system fell silent. It probably understood as well. Someone like me has an extreme emotional obsession, either 100% or 0. Holding the activation command that had materialized in my hand, I passed it to Jessica as if nothing were wrong. Jessie, this gift is for you, but you have to promise me you won't open it until 3 days later. Okay. Jessica smiled sweetly. Tomorrow is our wedding anniversary too. I've prepared a surprise for you as well. All right. Beep. The Conquered has officially initiated a farewell to the target mission. Transmission will begin in 3 days. Chapter 2. The next day, Jessica happily pulled me out of bed, full of excitement as she insisted on taking me to the small island where we had first confessed our love. Because of our story, that place had now been dubbed by people as the sacred land where the god of love descended. Along the way, Jessica kept emphasizing that she had prepared a surprise for me today. Host. According to system calculations, the target intends to tell you that she is already pregnant. Hearing the system's words, my heart stirred for a brief moment. Ever since 2 years after our marriage, my dream had been to have a child with her, because that would be proof that I could leave something of myself behind in this world. But now, forget it. My heart sank once more. I turned my head to look out the window and didn't respond to Jessica. The excitement on her face froze for a second, yet she still smiled gently. What's wrong, James? Is your leg hurting again from the bumpy ride? Jessica softly massaged my legs, just like before, then personally pushed my wheelchair out of the car, her movements careful and meticulous. Look, it's Jessica and her husband. They're even better looking in person than on TV, and so loving. The moment we got out of the car, we were surrounded by a crowd. Amid the noisy chatter, Jessica shyly leaned against me, looking exactly like a loving wife. A young couple excitedly squeezed their way in front of us. President Lin, we're getting married next month. Could you and your husband write us a blessing on our wedding photo? Everyone says you're the god of love. With your blessing, we'll surely be as happy as you and your husband. I froze for a moment, just about to refuse, when Jessica was already smiling and writing a message on their photo. James, you write something too. She handed me the pen and the photo, her eyes full of anticipation. I looked down and saw what she had written. May you be like James and me, together for all lifetimes, forever in love, never to part. Seeing those words, my stomach churned. In the end, faced with Jessica's hopeful gaze, I shook my head. Vows are useless. True love doesn't need to be put on display. As long as you only have each other in your hearts and eyes, you'll definitely stay together forever. At that, Jessica's expression stiffened, and the couple exchanged awkward glances. The men seemed to sense something was wrong. After saying, "Sorry to bother you," he quickly pulled his girlfriend away. James, what's wrong with you? Did I do something wrong? As if she had realized that I knew something, Jessica looked at me with panic and fear of losing me, fear that I might leave her. She probed cautiously. No, I finally spoke. I was just thinking about a movie I watched today. Jessica immediately let out a sigh of relief and smiled as she followed up. What movie? I slowly turned my face toward her and met her gaze. The female lead used to love the male lead very much, but later she changed her heart and kept hiding it from him. I stared quietly at Jessica's face, watching every subtle change in her expression. Jessie, if one day you changed your heart, never, absolutely never. Before I could finish, Jessica hurriedly cut me off, as if she couldn't accept such a possibility. James, the person I love most in this lifetime is you. Even if all the women in the world betray someone, I won't. I can't live without you. At that moment, I suddenly felt an unbearable pain in my heart, and in the very next second, her expression changed. I felt a sudden rush of heat in my nose, and I slid straight out of my wheelchair, collapsing onto the ground. Beep. System notification. As the host is about to disengage, bodily functions will gradually weaken. Remaining time, 2 days. James, what's wrong with you? We're going to the hospital right now. Jessica's voice trembled violently as she tightly clenched my hand. Large tears fell onto the back of it. Seeing that my nosebleed wouldn't stop, she completely panicked. She wrapped me in her arms and kept kissing me over and over. James, what's wrong? Don't scare me. Let's go to the hospital right now. Okay. I won't change my heart. I'll never change my heart. Don't overthink it. Okay, believe me, believe me. At the hospital, Jessica insisted that I undergo a full-body examination. A billionaire CEO personally ran around registering, fetching medicine, and handling everything without the slightest impatience. Sitting in my wheelchair, watching her busy figure, my heart felt unbearably sour. Suddenly, someone slammed hard into me. I, along with my wheelchair, toppled straight onto the ground. My completely numb legs crashed into the doorframe, instantly bruising and turning purple. Sorry about that. Oh, so it's Mr. James. I was in a hurry to get President Lin to sign something and didn't see you. When I looked up, a figure was already standing in front of me, his eyes full of contempt. Although I had never seen this man before, from his disdain and undisguised hostility, I immediately knew who had deliberately knocked me over. Christian, the man Jessica Lin was keeping outside. This was my first time seeing the male lead from the novel. He was wearing a well-tailored suit, looking confident and high-spirited. In the original story, he and Jessica had known each other since childhood. He would go through fire and water for her. Yet on the eve of the company's IPO, he took all the money and disappeared, leaving Jessica devastated, only to rise again years later. Even so, Jessica still loved him to the point of obsession, even destroying her own reputation in the end, ultimately becoming ruined and disgraced. My appearance had changed their storyline, but clearly, my attempt had ultimately failed. The story had still forced the two of them back together, just in another way. Jessica rushed over, panic written all over her face as she helped me up from the ground. Then she turned around and slapped Christian hard across the face. Christian, what are you doing? Can't work wait until tomorrow? Didn't you see that James isn't feeling well right now? Chapter 3. Jessica was so angry that her face turned pale, yet the panic in her eyes could not be concealed. Beep. The target's affection toward the host has reached 999%. Favorability toward the original male lead has dropped to 0.001%. Is that so? Yet what I saw clearly was the guilt hidden deep in her eyes, growing stronger by the second. I pretended to casually size up Christian, but the moment I noticed the lip mark on his neck, I froze. The bright red lipstick mark was exactly the same shade as Jessica's lipstick from yesterday. Assistant Christian is really considerate, I said pointedly, my tone dripping with sarcasm. Working so hard even late at night. Christian didn't care in the slightest. He casually wiped the corner of his mouth and smiled. Not at all. President Lin is extremely busy. I naturally have to cooperate as best I can. If everyone were as frail as some people, wouldn't the company collapse? Don't you agree, James? Christian, who gave you permission to speak to James like that? Jessica shouted sharply, then turned and bent down to grasp my hand. James, don't listen to his nonsense. As long as you're well, that's the greatest happiness for me. Christian's expression darkened. President Lin, this document is really important. I need your signature as soon as possible. Jessica frowned deeply, staring at Christian with a chilling aura settling around her. I said it already, nothing is more important than James. As she gritted out each word, Christian's face grew even uglier, the unwillingness in his gaze toward me becoming unmistakable. Since there's work to do, go ahead. I'll go home by myself, I said, my tone calm to the point of being frightening. But James, are you really okay on your own? It's fine, if I don't go home. Where else would I go? I replied irrelevantly, then turned and wheeled myself away. All these years since entering this world, my days had revolved entirely around Jessica. My world contained only her, no friends, no social life. Apart from her, I had nothing. Thinking this, I unconsciously turned a corner and followed them from a distance. In a deserted corner, Christian couldn't wait any longer. He pulled the pursuing Jessica into his arms and kissed her fiercely. Jessica resisted at first, pounding her fists against his chest. After a long while, the two finally separated. Jessica straightened her disheveled clothes and regained her usual cold composure. I've told you, no matter what, you are not to appear in front of James. That is my bottom line. Hearing this, Christian's eyes filled with resentment, so thick it was about to overflow. Seeing his expression, Jessica softened her tone. She gently cupped Christian's face. All right, don't be jealous. You're important to me too, really. Christian's Adam's apple bobbed, his gaze darkening. Really? Jessica stroked his head, as if soothing an injured puppy. Otherwise, she tiptoed and gently pressed her forehead to his. Otherwise, how could I have secretly supported you for so many years behind James's back? The moment I heard that, my heart clenched violently, the pain suffocating. The two locked eyes. Her gaze grew increasingly dazed, gradually stained with desire. Don't be angry anymore. How about I come over tonight and keep you company for a few hours? Jessica's words became openly provocative. Christian grabbed her arm and pulled her completely into his embrace. You're going to go back and accompany that cripple again? No, I don't want tonight. I want it now. Anger had just risen on Jessica's face when Christian, without a second thought, kissed her again, hot, frantic, and overwhelming. Jessica quickly melted under his assault, going from angry resistance to dazed compliance. They kissed as if unable to part, until Jessica was nearly unable to stand. Only then did Christian reluctantly let go. Panting, her eyes unfocused, Jessica finally compromised. James isn't feeling well today. After I go back and heat up his medicine, I'll come find you. I hurriedly wheeled myself away. Even though I already knew the two of them were together, I still couldn't stop the pain as I moved on. So all these years, I had been a fool, thinking I'd changed the ending, when in truth the plot had simply continued in another form. They had known each other for a long time, not just these past 2 months. That company program bearing my name, the Dawn Scholarship, had been something Jessica suddenly proposed years ago. I thought it was because she had once been drenched by rain herself, so she wanted to hold an umbrella for others. Because of our own hardships during our school years, I believe that was why she wanted to establish a scholarship to help others. Now it was clear, everything had been for Christian. The woman I had given everything to love had been secretly supporting another man all along, while I, like an idiot, was kept completely in the dark. My numb, unfeeling legs lay limp on the wheelchair, as if mocking my naivety. I thought I had rewritten the ending, only to realize it had all been nothing more than a joke. I pushed the wheelchair hard, trying to escape those suffocating memories, but no matter what, I just couldn't move fast enough. Chapter 4. By the time I returned home, the sky was already completely dark. The villa was brightly lit. Jessica stood in the middle of the living room, her face full of anger. Why isn't my husband back yet? Didn't I tell you to escort him? Where is he? What are you standing around for? Go look for him, now. The servants stood to the side, trembling. When they saw me, they all let out a sigh of relief. Seeing me return, Jessie hurried over at a light jog to steady my wheelchair, her joy unmistakably genuine. James, you're finally back. Why are you so late? I was worried sick. I'm fine. I gently brushed her hand away, my tone cold. Jessica didn't mind at all. She wrapped my legs into her arms, as if holding something priceless. James, don't take what others say to heart. In my eyes, you'll always be the best. As she spoke, she gently took my hand and placed it on her lower abdomen. Do you know, you're going to be a father? I looked into her expectant eyes, my heart skipping a beat. So this is our child. Even though the system had already told me, personally feeling the faint rhythm of life still left me stunned for a long time. Jessica affectionately rubbed her cheek against mine and said coquettishly, James, there's an important meeting at the company today that I have to attend. I promise I'll spend the entire day with you tomorrow. Okay. I froze for a moment, then fixed my gaze tightly on her eyes. What's wrong, James? She studied my expression carefully, but the moment our eyes met, an inexplicable panic suddenly rose in her heart. Why does your face look so bad? As if suddenly realizing something, she hurriedly grabbed my hand. If you want me to stay with you, I won't go. I won't go anywhere. Go ahead. Work comes first. This is just my old problem, I said lightly, just like always. Jessica finally relaxed. She pecked my cheek gently. I promise, once I'm done, I'll come back to be with you forever. For all lifetimes. She had said these words before, exactly the same. I pushed my wheelchair to the window. Downstairs, Jessica was holding Christian's hand, seemingly coaxing him about something. The next second, the woman who had just promised to stay with me forever wrapped her arms intimately around another man's neck, smiling brightly, kissing passionately. I stared at them, unmoving, letting the pain spread through my entire body. Jessica seemed to sense something. She suddenly looked up toward my direction, but saw nothing. Hidden behind the curtain, I gave a bleak smile as I thought of the system's words. There is no child anymore, and there is no us either. I don't know whether it was because the countdown to my departure was getting closer, or because I had finally lost the very last shred of hope in Jessica. That night, my body weakened to the point that I came down with a high fever. In my hazy consciousness, I heard Jessica's anxious cries by my ear. James, wake up, don't scare me. She fumbled as she checked my forehead. Why are you burning up like this? After saying that, she no longer cared about anything else. She lifted me up and rushed straight outside. My consciousness gradually scattered, my entire weight collapsing onto her. The two of us tumbled down the stairs together. Jessica didn't hesitate for even a second. She used her own body as a cushion to catch me, letting out a muffled groan of pain. She barely ever drove, yet she sped wildly all the way to the hospital. Amid the howling wind, all I could hear were frightened sobs. Doctor, hurry, check on him. The moment she saw the doctors, she roared hysterically. If anything happens to James, you might as well shut this hospital down. Amid the chaotic footsteps, I struggled to lift my eyelids. Jessica was gripping my hand tightly, her eyes swollen and red as tears kept falling. James, you must be okay. I can't live without you. Her usually immaculate clothes were smeared with mud. Her ankle was badly swollen, yet she stubbornly jogged alongside the gurney the entire way. The day after tomorrow is your birthday, she said shakily. The flowers on our island have bloomed again. I'll take you to see them. Okay. I won't be able to see them. The day after tomorrow is the day I disappear. I let out a bitter laugh in my heart, then completely lost consciousness. When I woke up again, it was already the next day. There were 2 days left before my departure. No, judging by the sunset outside, there should only be 1 day left. Seeing that I was awake, The nurse hurried over to take my temperature, her face full of gossip. Sir, your wife really treats you well. She stayed by your side all night last night. No one could persuade her to leave. She wiped your sweat, changed your medicine, and even warmed the 4-needle in her hands first. Afraid you'd feel cold. Oh right. Her assistant came looking for her just now. The two of them left in quite a hurry. Do you want me to help you contact her? I shook my head. No need. After the nurse left, I struggled out of bed, wanting to go to the doorway to get some fresh air. But the moment I pushed the door open, I heard an argument coming from the corridor. It was Jessica and Christian. What are you doing here? Jessica lowered her voice, as if afraid of disturbing my rest. You promised you'd accompany me today to pay respects to my parents, Christian said, lowering his head innocently, like an abandoned puppy. Jessica frowned impatiently. Christian was about to say more when he suddenly noticed me standing at the doorway. His expression shifted slightly. What's wrong? Jessica followed his gaze and was about to turn around, but Christian suddenly pulled her into his arms. Fine, if you're unhappy, then we won't go. Jessie, forgive me for being so persistent. I really just love you too much, that's why I keep lingering by your side. Christian, you're hurting me. Jessica tried to push him away with force, but Christian only held her tighter. After glancing at me, he spoke in a low chuckle, loud enough for all three of us to hear. Jessie, you know you like me too. The way you are in bed doesn't lie. As long as you like me, I'm willing to keep this relationship hidden for my entire life. Christian. Jessica stopped pushing him. After a brief pause, she looked up at him. Christian leaned in and kissed her again. I stood there at the doorway, watching their tightly entwined figures. For some reason, this time, my heart didn't hurt anymore. I wheeled myself back to the hospital room alone. Not long after, my phone vibrated. It was a picture sent by Christian. Chapter 5. The photo showed Jessica after a shower, wrapped in a towel, drying her hair. What kind of timing, location, and angle could produce a photo like that went without saying. James, you cripple who can't even stand, do you really think you can still give Jessie happiness? Looking at the taunting message, I silently turned off my phone and turned to fiddle with the flowers by my hospital bed. It didn't matter anymore. One more day, and I would finally be free. In this final stretch of time, I wanted to properly say goodbye to the world. Though, in truth, there wasn't much to say goodbye to. I had grown up by Jessica's side since childhood. My world had always consisted of only her. After thinking it over, I decided to donate the gifts Jessica had given me to the orphanage where I had lived as a child. Let it be the very last trace I left behind in this world. With a bitter smile, I sent a message to the director. Director, I'm going home, back to my own home. I'll trouble you with handling the donations. Then I called the lawyer and transferred all the shares and assets back to Jessica. Although in the early years I had helped her a lot using my advantage as a transmigrator, the company had ultimately been built by her own hands. It should be returned to her. This time, I no longer wanted to interfere with her ending. The moment I hung up, another taunting message from Christian came through. James, I know tomorrow is your birthday. Guess who Jessie will be with? At that moment, the hospital room door was pushed open violently. Jessica rushed in, her panicked voice trembling. James, the director said you're leaving. Where are you going? Her eyes reddened as she stared at me, anxious, tense, afraid. Just a business trip. I casually made up an excuse, no longer looking at her. You scared me to death. The director said you were never coming back. Jessica finally relaxed, though her eyes were still red, like a startled little rabbit. Come eat something. I went out especially to buy your favorite, century egg and lean pork congee. As she spoke, she ladled a bowl from the thermal container, carefully blew on it, and brought it to my lips. I took a sip, but my gaze caught the glaring hickey on her neck. She seemed to realize it too and hurriedly pulled up her collar, her eyes darting away. James, I've handled your discharge paperwork. Let's go out and get some fresh air. I nodded, saying nothing. What was there left to say? The truth was already laid bare. Just as we finished packing, Jessica's phone suddenly vibrated. There was no need to guess, it was Christian. James, there's something urgent at the company. Go ahead. I cut her off before she could finish. She looked at me, a flicker of panic crossing her eyes, something she herself hadn't even noticed. I'll be back soon, she said, no longer hesitating, turning and leaving. That night, Jessica didn't come back. Soon after, Christian posted a photo of them clinking glasses together at a bar. The next day, Jessica said she had an emergency meeting. Shortly after, Christian sent me a live photo of the two of them entangled in a conference room. On the third day, Jessica said she had an appointment with a supplier. Not long after, Christian privately sent me a 4D ultrasound image of a fetus. James, I need to accompany a client today. I won't be back tonight. Take good care of yourself. James, there's an important meeting at the company. I cooked you some congee and left it on the table. James, I'm a bit busy today. I'll definitely stay with you tomorrow. I deleted all the chat records, my heart utterly dead. Then Jessica sent another message. James, tomorrow is your birthday. Shall we go to Love Island to see the flowers together? I didn't reply. I turned off my phone and tossed it aside. The system's cold notification echoed in my mind. Host life countdown, 24 hours. The next day, the very last day of my life, I packed up everything I had previously listed for sale online and sent it out. I emptied the room, and emptied my heart as well. Jessica still hadn't come back. Turning my head, I saw the news playing on TV. A man had nearly drowned on Love Island, and a woman was frantically giving him mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. Christian, don't scare me. I can't live without you. As the camera zoomed in, I recognized her instantly. It was Jessica, and the one she was kissing was Christian. The news was cut off almost immediately. The very next second, Jessica's call came through. I didn't answer. I let it ring again and again, until it finally fell silent. Those clumsy excuses, I didn't want to hear them anymore. I wheeled myself to the small shop where we first met and ordered 2 bowls of our favorite beef noodles. Young man, why are you alone today? The owner asked warmly. Where's your girlfriend? Her, I replied calmly. She's gone to be with the one she was destined for. My tone was steady, as if I were talking about something completely trivial. The owner's expression dimmed. She didn't say anything else, only silently brought me a bottle of iced cola. As I ate, hushed whispers drifted in from around me. The news had spread even faster than I'd expected. Some people pointed at me and whispered. Some looked at me with pity. Others secretly raised their phones to take photos. I ignored it all, chewing slowly and finishing the last bite of noodles. Then I dialed her number, a long-lost smile on my face. The time's up, I said. You can open the gift I gave you now. Her panicked voice came through the phone. James, where are you? Don't believe what they said on TV. Listen to me. Let me explain. James, are you at that little kanji shop? She seemed to realize something, her voice filled with pleading. Wait for me. I'm coming to find you right now. Let's do this together. Okay, and the baby too. We can do it together, can't we? Together. There is no together anymore, Jessica. From now on, there's only you. The rest of your life, only you. Host's life value has reached 0. Mission failed. Binding terminated. As the system's cold announcement echoed, cries of shock erupted from the crowd around me. I felt my body beginning to disperse, little by little, breaking apart into countless points of starlight, dissolving into the river. And then, from behind me, came a heart-rending scream. James. Chapter 6. James, where are you? I drifted in the air and saw Jessica stumble over, calling my name in a trembling voice. Have any of you seen my husband? He was just here. She stopped passers-by along the riverbank one by one, asking frantically, like a little girl who had lost her way, completely at a loss. But no one could give her an answer. The onlookers only shook their heads, casting complicated looks her way. No, James wouldn't leave. He said he'd wait for me so we could celebrate his birthday together. Jessica muttered to herself, panic-stricken as she stared toward the middle of the river. The rippling water reflected the setting sun, glaring painfully bright. It's James. He's waiting for me. Jessica went mad, rushing toward the river. The crowd hurried to stop her. I hovered in the air like a bystander, watching her throw herself into the river without hesitation. The icy water soaked her clothes and extinguished the very last trace of hope in her eyes. Jessica choked on several mouthfuls of water as her body slowly sank. Yet her gaze refused to give up, searching relentlessly. James, you can't just leave me like this. You promised we'd go to Love Island together to see the flowers. Her cries came in broken gasps, her desperate figure rising and falling in the river, reflecting the final glow of the sunset. Congratulations, host. Target character Jessica's affection toward you has reached 100%. Conquest complete. Warning. System error detected. Separation process is irreversible. Host will be sent back to the real world. Warning. System malfunction detected. Host will temporarily remain as a sole entity. Still have to stay here. I let out a bitter laugh and swayed my semi-transparent body. The crowd on the shore fell into chaos. Some hurried to pass over life rings. Others called for help. The police arrived quickly and pulled the nearly drowned Jessica out of the water. The woman who once shone brilliantly on television was now nothing more than an empty shell that had lost its soul. Her face was pale, her lips purple, her stiff body trembled under the rescue blanket as she kept murmuring my name. James. James. Miss, is this your bag? A police officer picked up a canvas bag from the shore and handed it to her. I recognized it at a glance. It was the gift I had once given Jessica. Back then, we were both poor, so I had made this bag by hand for her. Even after she became the wealthiest woman in the country, she had never parted with it. I still remembered a reporter once asking her why she chose to carry such an unfashionable bag to public events. She had smiled brightly and said it was a gift from her husband. But after Christian appeared, Jessica changed her style entirely. The bags at her side became nothing but luxury brands like LV. I hadn't expected that today. She would deliberately switch back to this canvas bag. Yes, it was a gift from my husband, she said hoarsely. I can't find him. The same words, spoken again, were now steeped in sorrow. Watching Jessica's display of grief, I couldn't help but find it a little laughable. Suddenly, as if she had realized something, she hurriedly rummaged through the bag and pulled out the gift I had left for her. The delicate little box was still intact, as if nothing had ever happened. Right, James left me a gift. He said he wanted to surprise me. He must be joking with me. Yes, it has to be that. Her trembling hands moved to open the small box, but the moment it opened, tears slipped down silently. The box was empty. Inside lay only a light slip of paper. Jessica hesitated for a moment, then finally unfolded it. Jessica, I'm going back to my own world. That was the last sentence I left for her. Upon seeing the note, Jessica covered her mouth, breaking down into sobs. James, this surprise isn't funny at all. Those few short words were like a blade, cutting her heart open, blood dripping from every stroke. She could hardly believe that such a resolute farewell could come from someone as gentle as I had always been. I floated in the sky, watching Jessica sit dazed on the ground, clutching the note. James, where are you going back to? Didn't you say I was your whole world? She sobbed softly, yet didn't dare let her tears fall onto the paper, as if afraid of destroying the last trace of me between the lines. I let out a cold laugh and turned into a gust of wind, gently carrying the note away. No. Jessica reached out to grab it, but stumbled and fell to the ground, watching helplessly as the paper drifted away with the wind. Chapter 7. Suddenly, fragments of words I had once spoken while drunk flashed through her mind. I'm a transmigrator. I don't belong to this world. Her hands trembled slightly as she remembered the red string she had once tied for me. She hurriedly looked down at her own wrist, but the red string was long gone. Just like our relationship. Just like the final gift I had left her. Gone without a trace. Perhaps even Jessica herself had forgotten that after she promoted Christian to her assistant, that red string had been replaced with a couple's bracelet the two of them wore together. The crowd around her gradually gathered closer. They finally recognized that this soul-lost woman was none other than the richest woman. Jessica. That's really the female tycoon Jessica. Why is she crying like this here? Didn't she just say she was looking for her husband? Did her husband jump into the river? No way. Weren't they a loving couple? I remember seeing her confessing her love to her husband on the big plaza screen just a few days ago. What are you talking about? Didn't you see the news earlier? President Lin cheated. She's been shacking up with the men she sponsors. The surrounding chatter was like sharp needles, stabbing into Jessica until her expression went blank. James, it's not like that. I can explain. James. Jessica Lin knelt on the ground, clutching the note, her voice hoarse and broken. The woman who had always cared most about her image finally showed utter disgrace in public for the first time. President Lin, what is there left to explain? I work at the hospital. I clearly saw you hugging your assistant last time. A familiar voice came from the crowd. I focused my gaze and realized it was the young couple we had met earlier on Love Island. The young man who had given me a long, meaningful look before leaving had indeed noticed something was off. Of course he did. My attempts at concealment had been far too obvious. Besides the utterly indifferent Jessica, who else wouldn't have seen through it? You even had the nerve to write blessings on our wedding photo, saying you hoped we'd be as loving as you and your husband. Don't you find that ironic? I could tell your husband's expression was off back then. He must have already known. The young man's words were full of indignation on my behalf. The looks people cast at Jessica grew increasingly contemptuous. Buzzwords like manufactured persona, betrayal, female version of Schweppingway surfaced one after another. Jessica's face grew even paler as she stared at the river in disbelief. He already knew. How could that be? I saw her bite down hard on her lip as tears streamed down her face. I also saw her desperately trying to steady herself, trying to deceive herself. This is all just a misunderstanding. I can explain. James, come out. Okay, don't listen to their nonsense. Just as despair was about to completely swallow her, Christian squeezed out from the crowd. Jessie, are you okay? Christian rushed forward and hurriedly supported the unsteady Jessica. Jessie, calm down. Don't listen to them. But Jessica only stared at him hollowly, her pale face devoid of any emotion. Tisk, isn't that President Lin's pretty boy assistant? Yeah, the one who almost drowned on the news. And they still claimed there was nothing going on. Those whispers reached Jessica's ears. She suddenly shoved Christian away. The force sent the unprepared Christian stumbling back 2 steps. Get lost. It's all because of you that James got angry and left. Christian, you're fired. I don't want to see you ever again. Jessica's voice was hoarse, laced with heart-wrenching pain, yet watching it, I couldn't help but find it a little laughable. She didn't look at Christian again. Dragging her soaking wet body, she staggered in the direction of home. Passers-by along the road kept glancing over, accompanied by those hushed whispers. Jessica's back looked even thinner, even more desolate. After returning home, She walked step by step through every corner we had once lived in together. Yet in that familiar house, there was no longer any trace of me left. The desk that used to be slightly messy was now completely empty. The documents I used to pile up casually while working had all been cleared away. The fruit plate by the bed held only the faint, rotting sweetness of decay. The oranges I once casually placed there had long since lost all vitality. It wasn't until she walked into the bathroom and was stunned by the scattered medicine bottles and the medication schedule on the counter that she stopped. Jessica stood frozen at the bathroom door, her eyes locked on the empty pill bottles, tears streaming down her face. She remembered my pale complexion. She remembered how I forced myself to smile while enduring illness and pain. And her? Where had she been at that time? She had been busy entangled with Christian, ruthlessly casting me aside. James, I need to accompany a client today. I won't be back tonight. Take good care of yourself. James, there's an important meeting at the company. I cooked you some congee and left it on the table. James, I'm a bit busy today. I'll definitely stay with you tomorrow. Each perfunctory lie was like a sharp blade, slicing through her mind again and again. Jessica covered her face as tears slipped through her fingers. Once, I had been the perfect husband in her eyes, gentle, attentive, successful. But ever since Christian appeared, everything had changed. James, I'm sorry. I love you. She had said, I love you to me countless times before. But now, hearing it again, how ironic, how false, so annoying. When would the system finally send me back? I kicked the door beside me irritably. To my surprise, the door moved slightly. James, is that you? Are you back? Chapter 8. Jessica suddenly lifted her head and walked into the bedroom, her heart full of hope, but there was no one inside. Her gaze fell on the empty photo frame on the bedside table, and her breath caught. The wedding photo that had once been inside the frame had been burned by me, just like the nights we had spent together in the past, reduced to nothing. It was as if all the beauty and promises had never existed, as if I myself had never appeared in her life. Jessica collapsed onto the edge of the bed, on the verge of a breakdown. Gently stroking the photo frame, I floated in the air, watching Jessica cry alone with a blank expression. Yes, we still have a child. I still have a child with James. James loves children so much, he'll definitely come back to me. At that thought, Jessica was overjoyed and ran toward the hospital. The child was gone. I followed Jessica as she drifted into the hospital, my eyes fixed on her increasingly pale face. When Jessica learned the devastating news, she went completely insane and smashed her head against the wall. She was rushed into the emergency room on the spot and barely survived. Christian rushed over immediately, his face dark with anger. Have you lost your mind, Jessie? You were willing to throw your life away for that cripple. What's so good about him? Is he really worth this? Jessica lay on the hospital bed, a trace of sorrow flashing through her eyes. Christian, stop pretending. I saw the messages you sent to James, every single one, clear as day. You deliberately delayed me. You're the one who killed my James. In an instant, suffocating tension filled the air. Christian, I'm not blind. Don't think I don't know what you've been secretly doing at the company during this time. Jessica let out a cold laugh and continued. Her usually gentle eyes were now filled with icy light, as if she could see straight through Christian and expose his true face. In that moment, Christian's face turned deathly pale. In the original story, Christian, as the male lead, had exploited everything Jessica had to climb upward, all for the sake of reaching the pinnacle of power. In this lifetime, although my appearance had changed their original trajectory, Christian still hadn't given up. He deliberately approached Jessica and became her assistant, merely to steal company secrets and pave the way for his own rise. I had warned Jessica many times to be careful, but she thought I was just jealous. It wasn't until just now, when she accidentally found the messages Christian had written to me at home, that she finally realized the truth. Christian had indeed approached her with ulterior motives. This revelation turned her entire world upside down. She had actually ignored the husband she loved most for the sake of this liar. The two of them argued hysterically, the scene like a silent war, the air thick with the smell of gunpowder, and I simply watched this farce quietly, watching the two of them tear into each other like a rabid dog biting its own tail. Before long, Jessica kicked Christian out of the company without a sound. Instead, he sneered coldly. Jessica, do you really think kicking me out will erase your guilt toward James? And how much better are you, really? Back then, when you were starting the company, didn't you use him plenty as well? We're all the same in the end. Before he could finish speaking, a swarm of reporters rushed in. Camera flashes and lights exposed their humiliation in full detail. Christian fled in disgrace, while Jessica was struck to the core by his words and stood frozen in place. Fragments of memory flooded over her like a tidal wave. She heard herself softly making that vow. James, I'll stay with you for the rest of my life. But sadly, she broke that promise. She remembered how we played together at the orphanage, how we stayed up all night eating instant noodles to start our business, how we kissed passionately under the spotlight. oblivious to everyone else. Those once beautiful moments drifted farther and farther away amid her regret. With vacant eyes, she pushed past the crowd and walked toward the riverbank where I had disappeared. The wind roared in her ears. Using the last of her strength, she jumped into the surging river. James, I'm coming to be with you. I said it before, if you're not here, I won't live on alone. And I felt only an unspoken, cold mockery in my heart. Too late. This kind of forced devotion, chasing after death, was nothing more than ridiculous. At that moment, a familiar system notification suddenly sounded in my ears. Mission complete. System restored to normal. Host will be transmitted back to the real world. My consciousness was violently pulled away. Before I could recover from the shifting scenes, I had already felt the tangible sensations of the real world. Back in reality, my whole body felt as if it were falling apart. The backlash pain felt like 10,000 arrows piercing my heart, tearing at my fragile nerves every second. The system's indifferent voice echoed in my mind. Reward issued. Please check it yourself, host. I smiled bitterly. Everything felt like an absurd dream, and now, the dream was over. The ending of the novel had still changed. This time, Jessica jumped into the river to her death, and Christian was blacklisted by the industry. Another boy sponsored by the Dawn Scholarship eventually became the new richest man. Closing the book, I lay in bed for 3 whole days before barely recovering a bit of strength. As my scattered thoughts slowly gathered, I decided to begin a new life. Chapter 9. I pushed open the window, and the sunlight was blinding. On the windowsill lay the system's glittering reward, a huge sum of money, enough for me to do whatever I wanted. Using the generous bonus from the system, I rented a luxury apartment in the city center, overlooking the brightly lit metropolis. I plunged headfirst into a new life. I didn't keep pushing myself at work, nor did I continue starting businesses. After everything I had gone through in that book, I was simply too tired. I returned to my original line of work, going to the office day after day, and devoted more energy to living. Every morning when I woke up, I was filled with anticipation for the future. At work, I came into contact with the most cutting-edge fields of economics, expanding my thinking into an uncharted wilderness. The company gave me full authority and trust. I charged forward, breaking through obstacle after obstacle, as if nothing could blunt my edge. However, people and circumstances in life are unpredictable. One day after work, I passed by a bookstore. By a windowside seat, a familiar figure was sitting sideways, gazing out the window. It looked like Jessica. James, I finally found you. Jessica rushed out excitedly and hugged me tightly. How are you here? I shoved her away and frowned, unable to understand how she could appear in the real world. Her body stiffened. She looked at me pitifully, and after a long pause, she stammered. James, after I jumped into the river, I saw the system. It promised that as long as I traded my life, I could get a chance to see you again. And then I was transported here. Hearing this, I was dazed for a moment. James, I know there were many misunderstandings between us. I was controlled by the plot. I really didn't mean it. I know I disappointed you before, but I never stopped loving you. Really, the one I love is you, always has been. Jessica's eyes were full of sincerity. She raised her right hand, the red string around her wrist glaringly obvious. I said it. I would definitely find you. Please give me a chance. Let me make it up to you. Let me keep loving you. Okay. Heh. I looked at the glaring red string on her wrist and felt a wave of nausea. Traded your life for it. Jessica, what kind of act are you putting on now? When you were sleeping with another man behind my back, why didn't you talk about loving me then? And now you stand here pretending to be innocent, pretending to be some chaste, faithful woman. After saying that, I didn't look at her again and turned to leave. Over the next few days, Jessica turned into a piece of sticky gum. I couldn't shake her off no matter what I did. She blocked me downstairs at the company, at the entrance of my apartment complex, and even outside the gym I frequented. Every time we met, she cried her eyes out, sobbing as she said she had been deceived by Christian and had no control over it. She said that after I left, she had suffered endlessly inside, filled with regret. James, are you angry with me? Do you blame me for not protecting our child? I'm sorry. It's because I'm useless. Let's have another child for you. Okay, I'll give you many, many children. Jessica cried even harder. The woman who used to be proud and aloof now looked like a homeless dog, wagging her tail and begging for mercy. Jessica clearly misunderstood my smile. She escalated her efforts, sending me all kinds of gifts I used to like. She even knelt at the door of my apartment, crying and begging me to open it. Neighbors poked their heads out to watch the spectacle. I felt like a monkey on display, embarrassed and furious, completely fed up. I simply changed my residence and cut off every possible way for her to contact me. I thought I had finally escaped Jessica's entanglement, but I underestimated this woman's madness. The next night, I returned to my apartment after working late. The place was pitch dark. Just as I was about to turn on the lights, someone suddenly hugged me tightly from behind. James, I knew you wouldn't really abandon me. Jessica's voice trembled with sobs, her warm breath brushing against my neck. Disgusted, I shook her off and turned on the light. Seeing her pitiful expression only made me more irritated. Jessica, what exactly do you want? With a thud, she dropped to her knees in front of me, tears streaming down her face. James, I can only stay here for 5 days. I beg you, give me one chance to make it up to you. Okay. Even if it's just to let me celebrate one birthday for you. She cried even harder, rambling incoherently about how she had been controlled by the plot and how there was only me in her heart. Looking at her like this, I felt nothing but revulsion. Get out. I don't want to see you again. I pointed at the door and shouted harshly. She refused to leave, continuing to kneel there and cry. I dragged her to the doorway, shoved her out forcefully, and slammed the door shut. Over the next few days, Jessica still refused to give up. On the first day, she prepared a loving breakfast, imitating what I used to do, but I didn't even glance at it and threw it to a stray dog on the street. On the second day, she said she wanted to have a candlelight dinner with me, but I claimed there was an important meeting at work and stayed in the office all night. On the third day, the last day, Jessica tearfully brought in countless fresh flowers, filling my apartment to the brim. James, doesn't this look like the flowers on Love Island? Didn't you promise me we'd go see them together? She cried while video calling me. I impatiently hung up. Too late. The flowers on Love Island had long since withered. In the second before the call ended, snowflakes began drifting down outside the window. I saw Jessica turn into specks of starlight, just like I once had, and disappear. This dream was finally over.